Soon the play Return to the North was performed in Harbin, and the performance of the actors in the play and the theme song Separation were well received by all walks of life. Life in Harbin left a deep impact on my father, where he learned to play the guitar and became a warm and open personality. He later composed the music for Secure's poem Purple Cloud. In 1931, my father was admitted to the music department of Beijing Normal University. This was not father's original wish. Tsinghua, Yenching, Fujian, and Peking University were all schools he wanted to attend, but the tuition and fees at those schools were high. Every year it cost tens of dollars. After the death of his grandfather, the family's life began to be difficult. He had to choose to go to the teacher's college. Not only did the normal school not charge a penny, it also had a subsidy of a few dollars and was basically compulsory. So at that time, students from poor families were willing to go to the teacher training center. When entering the school, each student had to fill out a volunteer form, promising to be a teacher for life. In those days, the status of teachers was very high. The education level of the whole society was not high, and teachers were a sacred profession in the eyes of ordinary people. If someone graduated from teacher training but changed his profession to become a businessman, it would be a great shame in his life and the world would look down on him. After the baptism of the May 4th movement and the impact of the new cultural wave, Beijing became the center of the new cultural movement. Mr. Kai Yuanpei, an educator, put forward the idea of replacing religion with aesthetic education, and various music associations were set up in major cities such as Beijing and Shanghai, which led to the gradual establishment of the earliest batch of professional music education institutions in China. It was against this background that my father entered Beijing Normal University to specialize in music. At this time, music education was set up with reference to the music education system in Europe and the United States, and mainly focused on teaching knowledge and skills of Western music. Teachers were basically returnees from Western studies and foreign teachers. My father's voice teacher was the excellent soprano Countess Holovat Nikolai Shadowsky, a graduate of the Paris Conservatory. She was the aunt of Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, who was overthrown by the Soviet Revolution. After the October Revolution, she went into exile and could have lived a leisurely, upper-class life in France like the rest of the Russian royal family. But instead, she cherished her value as an artist. Her husband, once a Russian general, later worked in the Northeast, so she came to China as well. Her attitude towards life had a great influence on the young Wang Luobin. Mrs. Holovat's nobility, her dedication to art, gave my father a different kind of understanding of art than that of books. Yes, the supreme throne may be subverted in a day, and a family fortune may be destroyed in an instant, while art is eternal. Mrs. Holovat did not speak Chinese well, and usually gave lectures in Russian and French. In order to do well in Mrs. Holowat's class, my father took Russian, and he also went to Peking University to listen to French lectures. Vocal lessons don't really require much verbal communication, the teacher demonstrates, and the students listen to the voice. Mrs. Holovat was in her 60s. Her teeth were almost gone and she wore full dentures. In order to maintain the integrity of her voice, she often had to hold her hand against the dentures on her upper jaw when she sang in the high notes. My father sang Glinka, Dargamaysky, and other Russian musicians. Sleep, My Beauty. He always remembered these songs. There were also many European classical songs, and he fell in love with Western songs from the bottom of his heart, feeling that they were more lyrical than Chinese songs. Learning music was not as romantic and easy as one might think. It was just as tedious to learn and required a good deal of patience. Mrs. Holowat also valued her father's talent and often had him come to her home to train him individually. She believed that the normal university was for the training of high school teachers. not for the training of artists, and she cautioned her father that he must go to Paris. Only after training there would he become a true artist. At that time, Beijing Normal University is full of talents. Father's piano teacher is the German Valley Booker. Violin, composition teacher is returned to study abroad Wang Dezhao, incidental teaching music theory. Mr. Wang Dezhao was originally a chemistry student who loved music in his spare time. At that time, there was a shortage of music teachers, and many teachers were halfway through their careers. Several other teachers had also returned from studying abroad. My father had a good opportunity to learn here. To Paris. Once the idea was in my father's mind, it became a lingering conviction. I must go to Paris. My father also took world folk music with Mr. Kei Zhenghe. Mr. Kei was born in Taiwan who studied in Japan. He wrote China's first music dictionary. The textbooks used in this course were the two books World Folk Songs published by the Chungkyu Society of Japan, which contained more than 200 folk songs from various countries. Mr. K.E. also participated in the editing and included many Taiwanese folk songs. There were very few folk songs from mainland China because not many of them were organized into scores. Hong Yi Li Shutong was in the South at the time and was not able to teach them, but the handouts used were his. His style was a great influence on my father, and he was the first person to fill in Chinese lyrics with the melodies of foreign songs. His song, Beyond the Long Pavilion by the Ancient Road, the grass is blue even to the sky. The evening wind whisks the willow flute, and the setting sun is beyond the mountains. This song almost became the graduation song of the school, and there was no one who went to school in that era who did not know how to sing this song. It was the first time that people sang the melody of a foreign song like a Chinese song. It was then that my father realized that for a song to be singable by Chinese people, it had to be linguistically Chinese, otherwise it would not be acceptable to the general public. After the outbreak of the 9/18 incident, universities basically stopped attending classes, and everyone was engaged in salvation activities and propaganda against the Japanese. In his second year of college, my father joined the Southward Petition Group and petitioned in Nanjing. My father was one of the best students at school, and when he was still in college, he and another classmate gave a solo concert at the Concordia Auditorium in Beijing, where tickets were sold for 30 cents apiece, and an audience of over 400 people attended. My father composed a song for Xu Jimo's poem Cloud Tour as his graduation piece. It should be considered the first more mature piece he wrote, and you can see that the song was influenced by Li Shutong. In the midst of all the praise, Mr. Holowat said nothing but only repeatedly urged my father to go to Paris.